This is Dennis Raimondi with the Coffee League, found at thecoffeeleague.com. My guest today, Celina Lazarus. She is in Australia now, Melbourne. She was the 2017 Indian Australian Businesswoman of the Year. She's and currently on the 2018 Global Women to Watch list. She is the co-founder and owner and director of First Crop Coffee Australia, a raw coffee importing company. And I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, so go ahead and pronounce the coffee co-roasting and educational space you have in Melbourne.
Yeah, the Maillard Atelier.
Right. Okay. So, and which we want to talk about, and also, uh, and how I came to know Celina or know of her was because of her participation and being one of the speakers at Barista Connect, which took place in Australia recently, about focusing on women and women's issues in the coffee industry. So, thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
No, thanks for having me, Dennis.
Well, let's start with the First Crop Coffee, and it's a raw
hmm
coffee importing company. So you go to the farms, to the source, and you bring coffee uh, in. So is your role, is the
hmm
company's role, that of a middle person, that there are people that in the industry, people that have cafes, and they want to purchase coffee, and you help them source that coffee. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's actually one back from the cafe. It's actually the roaster that we are connected with.
Okay. So
We work,
go ahead.
yes. So we work with a lot of middle to small sized roasters. We actually procure the coffee ourselves. Most of the time, it's off relationships that we formed at Origin with farmers and with communities. And we sort of showcase their coffee and their story, and that's what we sell. We did do a little bit of coffee sourcing as an agent. So we did have some roasters tell us what they'd like, and
Mm-hmm.
so we found it for them. But we are more community focused. So we've just kind of pushed our own agenda and
Mm-hmm.
the coffee that we would like to showcase instead of sourcing what people want. So it's all the stuff that we like from all the amazing people that we've met along the way. And, sustainable sourcing is something that we do as well. So we purchase from the same farms and the same communities year after year so that they know that we're coming back every year and the quality is just increasing for our customers here in Australia. So it's just this amazing cycle of people working together, learning from each other and being connected through us, I guess.
This is fascinating for me. And this is an area that I'm learning about, want to learn more about. My understanding is that you source from 9 countries and 20 farms or thereabouts. I read that somewhere. And how do you go out and find those farms? I would imagine there's a significant amount of travel involved. And what
hmm
criteria do you use to evaluate those farms from which you would like to source?
Yeah, so I don't really know about that figure of 20 farms. I think it's around 50 now.
Hmm.
We do a lot of travel, yes. There's no set criteria of people that we work with. It's kind of flexible. Basically, we work with people who have the same values as we do. So we meet people and judging by their personality and their community input, and you can genuinely tell when people are interested in investing in their community. And you can spend a day or two with people, going around with them, seeing their farms, meeting their people, their communities, and the people that work for them. And you can get a sense of who they are as a person, and you can see where the money's going. So we don't make any purchasing decisions unless we've actually been to the farm and met the
Hmm.
farmers and the producers in person. This is a big this is one of the biggest reasons why we're so different to most importers. The face-to-face relationships that we have is something that really sets us apart from everyone else in this industry.
Right. Selena, if I go and go to a specialty coffee shop, third wave shop, and I order a coffee, what is most invisible to me is the farmer who has produced
hmm
that coffee. And one of the things that I think one needs to be concerned about is the farmer getting her or his share of the money from the
Mhm.
coffee business? Are they being dealt with fairly? And we see this term fair trade written about here, there, and everywhere. I'm not sure what it means, and I think most of us are drawn, hey, we want to buy it if it's fair trade, but does that mean anything? Is there really any certification? So tell us about that,
Yep.
and how obviously you're coming from a very ethical stance. How do you deal with it?
Mhm.
Is it being dealt that way through most of the industry? And if not, what can be done to change it? So sort of a three-part question.
Yep. So all of these things are quite separate. First of all, to kind of address the first part, farmers. So a lot of roasters think they know what the farmer's role is. Most people actually don't. The farmer is normally the business owner. So he owns the farm and he owns the operations because he's a business owner. It's the pickers, I think, that people are most concerned about and what they earn, but they kind of describe it as the farmer, if that makes sense. So the actual producers aren't the farm owners.
Okay.
That's a big thing that a lot of people don't really understand. So when you put a farmer's name down, you're just putting the business owner's name down. You're not actually putting the names of the 25 people that pick the coffee, prune the trees, do all the pest control stuff, harvest, like the coffee to the fermentation tank. So there's all these people that actually do this work, and the farmer's just the person who delegates everything. So this kind of information is something that a lot of roasters only learn when they come with us to Origin.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really know this if they don't go. They just assume that the farmer is the person who works hands-on, but that's not how it works at all.
Right. Well, let me ask you: those 25 people picking in the field that are actually doing the labor? When I say farming, what I think of, not the business end, and I'm glad you made that distinction. But those people that are actually out there doing the work, and it can be backbreaking work and bringing the cherries in and all
Mm-hmm.
that. How do we know that they're being properly compensated and taken care of? This is not unlike, when you buy a piece of clothing. What are the factories like in China or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Same sort of thing. When we get right down to the person doing the lifting, doing the real work, what guarantees do we have that they are being properly taken care of? Because when we hear fair trade, this is what we assume is meant by it.
Yeah, so, and I said 25 people, but that's like a really tiny, tiny
Mm-hmm.
smallholder.
Right.
But it's
Whatever
in
the
excess
number.
of a
Yeah.
thousand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, just in case anyone's listening,
Mm-hmm.
they think that, yeah. So Fair Trade is an organization which was put in place however so long ago. It had really good intentions, but it doesn't fulfill its purpose anymore. Fair trade in this day and age is just a logo that people put on bags to say that something is fairly traded,
Mm-hmm.
but in essence, it's actually not.
Right.
It's all just money at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of give you an idea, so my husband and I bring in coffees that are fairly traded through us, and because we have an involvement in a community level, we can see what's going on there, so we
Mm-hmm.
can say it's fairly traded. On the ground at Origin, there are certain costs that the farmer or the estate or the mill pays to be on the fair trade system and actually have their logo so that they can be, get paid a premium at auctions and with certain buyers and so forth. So sometimes we will pay that premium at an Origin level so that we know our farmers and our mills have the upper hand when it comes to negotiating price with other people if they don't buy from us. But we do not pay that premium once it lands in Australia
Mm-hmm.
because I do not want to support the people that are that have a premium building in the middle of the city and have all their staff driving fancy cars, or, it's just not something that I'm interested in because that doesn't align with my values. I would rather the money goes to people that I am personally paying and I know where the money is going.
Mm-hmm.
So fair trade is something that's completely commercial. It's something that businesses that are medium to large size have certain requirements for certain blends that have to be marketed as fair trade so that they get into certain businesses or they get certain distribution. But I think in Australia, fair trade has a different people have a different understanding of it than in America. It's not something that is widely needed here. So it's not something that we pay for because we just don't want to have that logo associated with our brand because of what we do. We're very ethical and our values are completely different to what fair trade initially started off as.
Right. So how in looking at the broader coffee industry, how can those people that are not being treated fairly in the coffee industry, people working the fields, and tens of thousands, who knows how many worldwide? It's a huge industry. Is there a way to start correcting that? And is it the role, the big people in the coffee industry, Blue Bottles, Stumptown, Starbucks, can they have they made efforts to start correcting those discrepancies?
Well, they sure can. I mean, everyone can make a change somewhere. Even a small change is a big change. But it all depends on whether people want to make the change and also whether people are educated enough to see that, maybe paying for a logo or paying an organization $15,000 a year just to use their logo was not a good idea.
Right.
Because it's not actually helping the little people.
Right.
With regards to having everyone treated fairly, I think that that's everyone's problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the onus is on us as a fair trader, as an importer, to do that because we are on the ground every so often working in and amongst these people, talking to them constantly. We are always in their faces, so we are able to make that change. And everyone else who is in our position has the power to do so.
Oh, yeah. One thing that I found, and maybe I'm naive, I'm relatively new to coffee. I come in as a journalist, and that is most of the people I meet in just specialty coffee seem to be, and I'm generalizing, but it's based on my experience. People that are generally very ethical, and people that do seem to care about sustainability and those things that are important to keep the industry going into the future in a proper way and fairness and all that. I hope so. Along these lines, specifically, okay, we talk about the workers not necessarily being treated right, what can change. I want to talk specifically about women in coffee, that those people working the fields, women and children, are young kids working the fields that shouldn't be. Are women not being treated fairly? Are they being paid less for the same work? Are these kinds of things? And I know you've been involved with Barista Connect, which is an organization that specifically focuses on women in the coffee industry. And so I just want to hear your thoughts and recommendations in that area.
Yeah, when it comes to women in coffee at Origin, women are highly represented. There's a lot of women working in the fields, working in really high positions in the mills, working with quality control. There's only one male that we know of that works at our mill in Guatemala. Everyone else is female. So when it comes to quality and all these roles that have really a big significance at an origin level, whereas in a place like Australia or the United States would probably be a male, it's a female. So I think women are really heavily represented in the coffee industry at Origin, and they are, to an extent, being treated fairly. Again, it depends on the origin. Again, it depends on who the exporter is or the importer and also the farm owner. I mean, if I can use the analogy of a cafe, a business owner who runs a cafe can put put the price of a coffee up by $1, but not necessarily pay their staff an increased wage from that profit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can take that analogy and put that on a farm level, you can still pay the farmer an increased amount of money, but it does not guarantee that it's going to get to the pickers and the people the little people. But the difference here is that we only work with one estate, and that's Nicaragua.
Mm-hmm.
We don't actually work with any other estates that are functioning as big businesses, and we know that the money's not really going to the pickers. I mean, we spend a lot of time, especially in Colombia. We started a project called the Women's Coffee Growers Project, and that was to support women in the Popayan, Cauca region who were still struggling from all the internal turmoil in Colombia and were either uneducated or their husbands have left them or their families abandoned them. So there's so many other issues there that, didn't really relate to coffee, really. But these women kind of needed a means of income, so we hired an agronomist to work with them, and we kind of put some money into teaching them how to successfully grow and harvest specialty coffee. And so through that project, so there's 2,300 women that is in that program at the moment, and we actually imported their first lot of coffee last year, which people went crazy for because it was a labor of love from these women as well. They weren't coffee experts, but with a little bit of education, they got to produce this amazing coffee. So there are these projects that we have on the go. And I kind of lost my train of thought.
No, you were there. I wanted to go into some other areas, and then believe me, your train is going in the right direction, and I'm learning an enormous amount, and I want to pick your brain some more, and that is in other areas of coffee. For instance, in the roasting end, I had Joanna Alm, is it? I think from Drop Coffee. She's finished second, third, fourth in the World Roasting Championships. Sarah Allen, I just interviewed. She's finished second the last 2 years in the U.S. Barista Championship. So there's been not enough women in the finals and winning some of these areas of barista. They've been male dominated, but I think that is definitely in the direction of changing. Do you see that changing? And in the other area that I haven't looked into, but I want to look into and discuss more and find out more about is women in the higher echelons of sort of corporate coffee. Like I just interviewed the head of marketing for Stumptown, and it was a woman. But are women properly represented on the boards? Are they the Specialty Coffee Association for the U.S. and Europe? It's something I'm investigating now as a journalist. So these are the kinds of areas that I'd like to hear more about from you and your thoughts in terms of what's going on and what could and should be going on.
I think on the Western side, I think that's probably a good way to put it. Yeah. On the Western side of things, the coffee industry lacks that female representation for sure. In not only on a competition level, not only on a management level in cafes and companies, and also at the top in these big corporations. I think the direction we're going in is positive, but it's a slow burner. It's going to take a while, just like it has always been. It takes a long time, it seems, for women to kind of prove themselves. We have a lot of potential, but we also have a lot of what some men lack, like, intuition and just, gentleness sometimes is needed in business, a gentle but fierceness, which some women have, which is really needed in management. That's kind of a little bit off topic, but I think women are really underrepresented. And I've actually competed myself in Brewers Cup in our state of Victoria, and I've come second in Brewers Cup, just using a list coffee of ours. I was up against all these geishas, and there were 12 competitors, and out of all of them, there was my El Salvador Bourbon. And I just wanted to prove that it was just all about the coffee. It wasn't really the performance. So I brought a really well-roasted coffee with a really amazing method, or very simple method, and ended up in second place. It was just solely just to prove a point. And as a woman in competition in Australia, there's hardly any woman competing. And I think that's mostly because they are a little bit intimidated of all the guys that compete and are employed by companies solely to compete.
Right.
So they have all the time in the world to work on their routines and work on their brewing methods and their coffees, and they don't really, I mean, some of them I'm sure have full-time jobs, but most of them do just take months and months for competition, which a lot of women don't really have that luxury. I mean,
Right.
I was running my business and also opening Maillard, and then I was also working on my coffee, and then a week before I kind of came up with a speech, and it's not the type of thing that we have that luxury. I'm not sure if that's just the case across the board, but in Australia, that's just the pattern that I've been seeing.
Right.
It's women that have these full-time roles and just had time to just fit their practice in.
Right.
And just, but I do know a lot of males in this industry that are employed just to compete. So
Right. Yeah, it's interesting a point you bring up about being employed just to compete. For me, I think that's wrong. I think that a barista that all they do is train to compete is no longer a barista. A barista is, to me, it's somebody, this is how I look at it. Wait a second. We're looking at baristas. These are people that interact with other human beings. They have personalities. They create a coffee culture, or at least they help to do it, and so on and so forth. But I think all these things will, and I know a friend of mine, Steve Maloney, with the Barista League out of Sweden. He's Australian actually, and he's the Swedish last 2 years Swedish barista champ. He has started an organization to change the angle and sort of the culture of the competition itself a little bit. And so I think a lot of people doing a lot of interesting things there. One other area I wanted to cover it with you, and we can come back to any of these other points, and that is you have a coffee co-roasting and educational space, and that was interesting. I didn't know about that. I didn't ever thought much about co-roasting, but I would think if you want to get in the coffee business, roasters can be very expensive, and if there are ways that, and I obviously there are, where you can start without having your own equipment, but you want to roast your own beans and all, that is possible. Tell us about that and how that came into being for you.
Yeah, so the Maillard Atelier was basically an idea that my husband and I had for some time. We've been talking about it, and we've kind of taken from all our customers over the years and what their needs were. Some of our customers started off with just a really tiny shop roaster, maybe a 2 or 5 kilo roaster, which was just in the middle of their cafe for show, but was slowly outgrowing that little roaster. And so the idea that we had was, maybe we'll put in 2, not large roasters, but at the moment we've got 2 15 kilo roasters. So we thought, we just put something a little bit substantial in a warehouse, and we can house people that are growing. If these little small roasters needed a space to do their wholesale or just outgrew their roaster completely, they could come to us and they could use our roasters. That was kind of the vague little idea that we had. But over time, once we actually started the procedure to actually open the space, we learnt of all these people that wanted to get into roasting but actually couldn't afford the capital to buy a roaster, like what you've just said. Roasters are really expensive. And all these people started coming out of the woodwork since, they started kind of going public with the idea. And they were telling us how they wanted to roast, but they just couldn't afford the roaster. And so they just didn't know what to do with that dream of having a small batch artisan type business. And so our shift, I guess, went from the people that were outgrowing their roasters to helping all these small businesses launch their business. And over time, we just started seeing all these little, people that were roasting for subscriptions, and just people that were roasting for their own cafes, or maybe they had a group of cafes, and so they employed a roaster to come in and roast for all those cafes. So we've kind of seen a whole mixed bag of people coming in. And we've also had some people come in hiring our roasters so they could run their own roasting courses, do some one-on-one training with their own staff, or maybe some other people if they work as a consultant. So the business has gone from just that little idea of helping some people out to helping a whole bunch of people out, because we've been able to launch some really great brands from the space. And not just people hiring the roasters, I guess. We've been able to open up our space to teaching people as well. We hold barista courses and we hold roasting courses.
Celina, do you and your husband divide responsibilities? Do you take care of certain ends of the business and he takes care of the others, or are you all in all areas together?
Well, we're pretty much involved with everything. We work alongside each other and we make all the decisions together. There are certain expertise. Obviously, my husband he's been roasting since he was 17 years old. So he's been in the coffee industry for a really long time. And this is just his passion. He lives and breathes coffee. So he is the coffee guru, I guess. He's the one that if people have any really specific question that I cannot answer to do with roasting or anything really particular, he's the one to go to. So we do have our strengths, definitely, but we do make most of the decisions together because, this is ours. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I have to ask you, what are your own coffee tastes? How much and in what form do you and your husband consume coffee?
Well, we drink a lot of coffee. Personally, my favorite coffee is Ethiopian. Because not only because I'm from Africa, but I just cannot get past the strawberry aroma of it. And I drink my coffee every morning as a long black. So that is my coffee. Okay. And a lot of my customers know whenever we go around to visit them, they've already got a long black on the way when I get there.
And how many cups of coffee do you have in a day?
I sip coffee, so I don't drink complete cups.
Okay, I
so
understand.
I'm very smart about the fact that I never completely finish a coffee, so that I don't have caffeine overload, because at the end of the day, I'm human like everyone else. Right. And a little bit too much coffee will make me jittery and a little bit crazy and paranoid. You just need to be smart about it.
And your husband?
He drinks all his coffees and a lot of coffee. He's probably about 5 or 6 cups a day.
There you go. Well, I can relate on some days. Well, Celina, thank you so very much for your time. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I've learned a lot. I want to have you back on sometime because I have many, many more questions for you. And the world of coffee, the coffee industry is evolving at a very rapid pace. So, and hopefully going in a great direction, but much more to discuss. So, thank you so very much for your time, and we'll have all the information posted up so people can find out more about what you're doing and first crop coffee in Australia. And I want to again mention Celina was the 2017 Indian Australian Businesswoman of the Year. So congratulations on that. I read about the other finalists. There was you were competing against some really fantastic people. So it was a great award to get. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you.